And I was reading your piece just last night, which is all about the nudge brigade, as we call them, the Plan A, Plan B situation. Tell us what you make of it all.
Yeah, the winter plan isn't all bad. It's not all bad. Some of the most draconian sleep loss-inducing schedules of the Coronavirus Act are rescinded. You know, that's the ones to detain the potentially infectious and shut schools, so it's good. But the whole plan is absolutely rife with nudges. Yeah. And nudges are behavioural science tricks designed to prod you and prime you and prepare you into acting like the model citizen, the way that the government wants you to behave. So there's a few techniques that are used throughout this winter plan, and I thought it would be helpful to kind of run through them, because the thing is, once you've seen the nudges, you can't unsee them. Right. Once you've seen the smoke and mirrors, you'll always see it. So they've used techniques like foot in the door, the leapfrog effect, salience, confusion, incentivization, and reciprocation nudging. So should we go through some of those?
Let's go through from the beginning, yes. Because the one, I read your leapfrog thing and I wasn't quite sure what that meant, so I'm interested to know.
Okay, well actually, a behavioural scientist mate of mine, Patrick Fagan, very clever, got his own independent consultancy, and he's ex-Cambridge Analytica, he came up with that term. Okay. So I'm going to have to give him the credit for it. It's basically when a debate is kind of leapfrogged. So for instance, there was a lot of debate about whether 12 to 15-year-olds would be able to give consent for their COVID vaccine or not. What that does is get you all talking about the issue of consent. Yes. And then the end result, which is that vaccination will be rolled out to 12 to 15-year-olds, is a fait accompli. It's a denouement. It's done. It's what you call the door in the face.
In other words, you've talked about it for so long that you're kind of expecting it to happen.
You're mentally primed, but not only that, you've been talking about the mechanics of it, not whether it's actually right or not. So it's leapfrogged you over your initial objections by making you distracted and discuss something else, which was the issue of consent. He's a clever guy, that one. Okay. Patrick Fagan, but clearly the government's behavioural scientists are very clever too.
Yes, because it's interesting, because it was only the other day, I think I was talking to someone about SAGE and about the advisors to the government, and somebody said to me, when is it that they're going to be told, thanks very much indeed, we don't need you anymore? My belief on that one is that they've been there for quite a long time, and they were there before COVID. That we've been being treated like this for quite a while, long before COVID ever came along.
Yeah, well, it's worth it's worth remembering that SPI-B, who report into SAGE, do advise on a number of issues on the National Risk Register, not just COVID. Yeah. They didn't meet, I believe, between January and June of this year. Oh. They're not always as involved as you think. And actually, I think we should probably be assuming that more comes out of the Behavioural Insights team, which is the nudge unit, which is part of the Cabinet Office, but also a separate company. And the behavioural scientists that are in different departments like the Cabinet Office, but also in Public Health England, as it was, and the NHS and the other agencies. So who's in that, as far
as you're aware? Is it people like Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance and others?
What, on SPI-B?
No, in the behavioural unit you were talking about.
Well, you can look it up online. The Behavioural Insights team is headed up by a guy called David Halpern, who founded it under the Cameron government. And there's a number of people in that office, and they have offices around the world now, actually lodged in other government departments. It's fascinating, fascinating web of behavioural science advice. So we've got the leapfrog effect. Then there's the foot in the door technique. Yeah. So we've got Plan A and Plan B. Now I'd suggest that Plan A is like training pants for Plan B. Plan A is only there to get you used to Plan B. Plan B is only what will happen if there's unsustainable pressure on the NHS. But of course, there's unsustainable pressure on the NHS every year. So consider yourself put on notice. I think what this means is the government wants to unleash Plan B, which is the vaccine passports. Right. So this is the foot in the door. They get you used to Plan A, they get you acclimatised to that idea, but only so they can bring in Plan B. Of course, they could be wrong, but I might not be. Let's see what happens.
That's right.
I
don't think anyone would make a bet that you would be wrong.
Not by this stage, I'd have thought. The other reason that you can suspect that Plan B is a desired outcome is the government is consulting again on vaccine passports. Right. Now, they've already consulted, and they had over 52,000 responses last time. Yeah. And PACAC, part of the Cabinet Office, also consulted, and they had 9,000 responses. So that's a lot of responses to the last consultation.
And we also know that they've introduced them already, have they not, in Scotland?
Yes.
And I'm not sure if they have already in Wales, but it's imminent if it hasn't started yet.
I think it's the vote today.
I think it might be, yeah.
I think the vote's today. So if we gave all those responses last time, I can only assume we didn't give the right answers. So the government's consulting again.
Yes.
And I think this consultation is frankly absurd. I don't know if you've done it, Mike, but it's quite a frustrating one to respond to, because the design of the survey is such that you are forced into giving certain choices to elicit an answer they obviously want.
Right.
So, for instance, there are questions where there's no negative answer.
Right.
You basically can't say no to vaccine passports. There's an open text field.
So what kind of questions?
I can't remember that one off the top of my head. It's about whether staff should be forced to have mandatory vaccine passports or not.
Right.
It's about different examples when you would and wouldn't want staff to be and attendees to have mandatory vaccine passports or to have tests available.
Right.
It's not a very long survey, but what it doesn't do is give you the option to answer fully in the negative if that's your position.
Yes.
So I would still urge everybody to do it, because you can put the answer you want into the text box. But what that shows is there's an outcome in mind,
yes,
which supports my idea of plan A to plan B being foot in the door.
And somebody has to come up with all this stuff, which is what disturbs me the most, because it means that they are actually attempting to mislead people and or make you go in a particular direction. And that takes quite a lot of work, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's
not happening by accident, in other words.
Of course not. No, there's a lot of bias in this consultation. I'd say it's got the fingerprints of the behavioural scientists smudged all over it. We're also trapped in a Groundhog Day of modelling. So we've got through September, so we can comment on the doom-mongering that came out of SAGE.
Yes.
They said that up to 7,000 people could be hospitalised per day during the month. It did go up to 1,000, I think, at the worst, but it's fallen, it's levelled off. Right. We never reached the worst case scenario again. The problem is, although it's presented as a worst case scenario, that worst case scenario is what makes the headlines, and it's what sticks.
Yes.
And that in behavioural science is what's known as salience.
Right.
That's what sticks in your head. And so those big numbers fuel the policies, but they also justify them, and they stay in your brain and they kind of haunt you.
Right. And it means that people are constantly being warned of something as well, so that you're people have said that the petrol crisis, and I always believed that it was not a petrol shortage. It was created by people going to get petrol who didn't need to get petrol. And I think we talked about this last week, that you were saying that people have now been conditioned into behaving in a particular way because they think that something's going to run out, and they don't really believe what the government tells them. If the government says don't panic, they panic.
Well, I just think trust is going to be in tatters at the end of the whole management of this COVID epidemic. Yeah, it feels sometimes like we're being gamed.
Yes.
The other thing
softened up for something.
Yeah, well, we can come on to that in Christmas in a minute. But the other thing about this plan A to plan B is there's no quantifiable parameters. It's very fluid. It's very unspecified. We just know it's about unsustainable pressure on the NHS. Now, that creates confusion and stress. You don't know what it is that's going to get you from plan A to plan B.
Yeah.
What does confusion do? Well, it disarms you, and it would make you look more to the government for direction.
Yes.
So there's something about confusion which is infantilising, and it also primes you for the next directions which you're waiting for. It's another behavioural science tactic to increase compliance.
Right. Because we look at places like Denmark and Sweden now, where they've done away completely with testing. They've done away with any kind of COVID restrictions of any kind. They're basically saying this is no longer a dangerous disease. And yet, we kind of aren't talking about it, I find, at the moment. I know that you're talking about vaccine passports, but I haven't really heard much coming from the government about COVID. The last thing I heard was at the weekend when I was rather horrified to hear Sajid Javid saying that people are going to be fired from care homes if they're not vaccinated.
It's just, I think that's just so awful.
How can they do that?
The people that we were encouraged to clap for, the people that worked throughout the pandemic in the most dangerous of settings, would now be sacked. Well, they're not saying they're going to sack them from the NHS, though. You're saying they're going to sack them from care homes. Some of them are going to work in the NHS where that doesn't apply. But it might do, because that's also threatened. Yeah. Another example of behavioural science in the winter plan is the use of rewards and punishments.
Yeah.
So the double vaccinated don't need PCR tests anymore for travel, which is obviously a massive hassle and really expensive.
Yes.
So that kind of makes sense. You think, well, yeah, if you've been vaccinated, why do you have to go through this rigmarole?
Right.
But what about people who have natural immunity because they've had prior infection? The fact that they're not included shows that this is just a classic nudge. It's an incentive to get you vaccinated. But as much as it offers a reward for the vaccinated, it's also a punishment for the unvaccinated.
For the unvaccinated, yes.
Yeah, so it's trying to nudge you into a certain sort of behaviour, but those who've got prior immunity should be treated the same as the vaccinated.
Funnily enough, I was on a bus this morning because I put my car in to have a couple of things done to it. And there was an announcement. I haven't been on a bus for a while. And it said you are required to wear a mask while travelling on any TfL operated service. Now, that's not what actually the law says. The law says you can wear a mask if you wish, but you don't have to. That's not what the announcement said. The announcement said you're required to wear a mask. I wasn't wearing one.
Yeah.
And not everybody was either. But I wonder why they do that.
Well, it's deliberate confusion, isn't it?
Well, it's also kind of, it's worse than nudge, really. It's trying to shame you almost into doing it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is. Of course, only COVIDiots would be silly enough to have taken off their masks.
Yeah, you must be some kind of maniac.
Yeah, you don't
trying
care.
To kill people.
You don't care about people.
No. I mean, luckily, most people don't seem to have gone in that direction. But that's clearly what the aim is.
Yeah, I think we've reached a kind of a tipping point. A lot of people aren't wearing masks now, and I think it would be hard to persuade people that it's a good idea to do it again.
Right.
But we'll have to see, because all these measures are held in Plan B, aren't they? A bit like a sword of Damocles.
Yeah.
Will they, won't they? Will these awful mandations come back? And the idea is that maybe vaccine passports would be presented as the alternative to masks or lockdowns or anything if we're just good boys and girls.
Even though the things that we know are that vaccine passports are worthless because either one, the vaccines work, therefore you are protected, and two, they don't work, in which case you're not protected. So what's the point? And secondly, to go back to the 12 to 15-year-old vaccination program, I don't believe that's going terribly well. I was watching a show the other night in which they said the take-up for 16 and 17-year-olds is not very high either. I think it's something like 50 to 60%, which is lower than they wanted. So, and I haven't yet heard from my son's school as to what they're doing about masks and the testing, because they said they were going to review the testing procedure at the end of September. It's now October. I haven't heard anything.
Well, I don't think there'd be any justification for it now. We now know it's got an infection fatality rate of 0.096%. It seems crazy to bring in a medical ID status certificate, masks and tests for something which has the same infection fatality rate as a flu.
Yeah.
It would be strange now to bring these measures back. And yet there does seem to be this push still towards the COVID passports. And there's another area of confusion around them, which I think could reflect confusion in government or could be designed to confuse us, so we don't know which way is up. You know, within a week we had Sajid Javid say there's no evidence for vaccine passports and scrap them but not rule them out for pubs. And we had Boris Johnson say they're sensible but not offer any evidence. And there's a feeling, you know, does the left hand not know what the right hand is doing? Or is there a big behavioural science brain in between? Or is it just all about
confusing? Because I must admit, when we spoke to somebody yesterday about the new travel plans, because October the 4th was the day when the travel restrictions kind of changed, I completely had no clue where we even were anymore. You know, and I'm supposed to be on top of these things, and I literally couldn't tell you until we spoke to our guest yesterday what it was actually, what was going to change and what it was going to mean. And I think an awful lot of people have no clue. But this is what I find interesting about why we're not hearing about it as much, because I also wonder whether that's a bit deliberate. You know, we're hearing Tory party conference. You know, we heard from Rishi Sunak yesterday, who was talking about, you know, having to pay the price of all of the public money that's been spent. We're going to have Priti Patel today talking probably about the Insulate Britain people and what she's going to do to make it pretty difficult for them to continue to demonstrate. We've heard from Sajid Javid that he's going to improve the NHS. Nobody's really talking about COVID anymore.
Well, it'd be lovely if we could stop talking about it and for vaccine passports, etc., to all go away.
Yeah.
I mean, it does look from the data like this is over, but I'm going to stay in my lane. That's not my lane to talk about that.
And you were talking about it yesterday in Manchester, right?
Yeah, I went up to
what happened there?
Yeah, I went up to the Conservative conference to give a talk about vaccine passports at a fringe event. Actually, funny story. It was a great event. I was on a panel with Sir Graham Brady, MP, Dr. Carl Heneghan, and Alan Miller, who founded the Nighttime Industry Associations. And
all regulars on this radio station.
All regulars, all great people.
Yeah.
And me, and we were talking about whether vaccine passports are conservative. Now, this is new for me. It's my first time at a political conference, and I think of myself as quite apolitical, but I found I had quite a lot to say on the subject. So great event, and it should have been in the Conservative conference programme. And I found out as we went in that apparently it had been dropped from the programme.
Oh, really?
Yeah, our event wasn't listed, but still...
Are you the Rosie Duffield of the Conservative Party?
Well, I'm not in the Conservative Party, so... Yeah, it was a bit of a strange one. The event organisers didn't quite know what to make about that, but it was still really well attended and, you know, great perspectives on it.
And Graham Brady's always said that he would vote against them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think the government expected the level of opposition they've had from the leisure industry, from people writing to their MPs and from MPs themselves. This was not. This was a lot more unpopular than they thought. But I tell you what, the fact that only 55% of 16 to 17-year-olds have been vaccinated does make me fear that they might want to unleash Plan B.
Yeah.
Because the vaccine passport is a nudge. You know, we're talking about the nudges in the Winter Plan. The vaccine passport is the nudge. It's to encourage uptake of the vaccine. It's about making a choice. You know, get vaccinated and then you can access all these products and services and any employment you want and lecture halls and easy travel, or don't get vaccinated and don't access those things. It's a pretty crappy choice, but it is a choice, and it is designed to push you towards being vaccinated because it just makes life easier.
But as time goes on, I think more and more people are getting the idea that actually that's exactly what they're trying to do, and so they're not following the instructions and they're not going to do it. And also I've seen evidence from different parts of the country that where they've been asked to sort of provide vaccine passport effectively for people to go to something, the people actually running the event are not exactly being very enthusiastic about doing it, so they're not really checking everybody. And I think without their compliance, if you like, it's an impossibility anyway.
Absolutely, and you know, that's why I wanted to talk about it today, because if you show people the kind of tricks that magicians are dazzling you with, once you've seen the trick, you know to look straight past it and up the magician's sleeve.
Yes.
So it's good to call it out. Be aware. People should know. We should be getting a vaccine because of the medical benefits it offers us, not because it's a way to access freedoms.
No.
And the fact is, there are people who'll be put off, like you say, and there are also people who've made a rational decision to have it, or people that won't because of cultural reasons or religious reasons or mistrust. And those people will fall off the edge of society if we introduce vaccine passports. And so my main message to the Conservative conference was, if they're about levelling up, there's no way that something like vaccine passports helps us level up, because people fall off the edge of society and it's the most disadvantaged, and it's people from minority ethnic groups, and that's just not right.
No. The thing that surprises me the most is what's happening in America, and I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, how many people there have fallen for this, and New York apparently in particular, which is a place I know well, has completely gone vaccine passport mad, and apparently people are getting fined if they haven't been vaccinated. You're not allowed into restaurants. I mean, they're really being quite strict about it.
Isn't it interesting?
Yeah, I mean, New York used to be one of the most dangerous and exciting cities in the world. When I lived there in the 80s, you literally didn't know if you were going to get shot dead on the way to work. I mean, it was that exciting, and I was in my 20s, so I didn't care, you know. But now it's like gone completely the other way.
I know. Do you know, it really kind of puts me off going.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I
want
to
go
go
I'm going
anywhere
to
like
Christmas I'm going to spend at my sister's place in Connecticut, and we were talking about, should we go into New York? And I was like, I'm not even sure I want to go. I'm not even sure. And it used to be my second favourite city in the world, and I'm not even sure I want to go and visit.
I know how you feel. Like, you know, I've always felt I wouldn't want to go to Saudi Arabia because I don't want to go to a country where women couldn't vote or drive.
Right.
I don't really find that appealing.
Not really.
I think the way they treat women is very off-putting. I don't want to go to a country equally that treats freedom lightly.
Yeah.
I think there's part of me that wouldn't feel safe, or that it's a pleasurable place to go on holiday. I mean, it's put me right off Canada, Australia, New York.
Well, don't worry, you can't
California.
go to Australia anyway.
Can't go to Australia anyway. They wouldn't have me, would they? They won't even have their own citizens who are abroad. So yeah, it's not good for the brand of a place,
no,
is it? So you mentioned Christmas.
Yeah.
Okay. once there was this kind of joke that Michael Gove was the Minister for Christmas, I thought, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And Boris Johnson talked about how he didn't want to have to cancel Christmas again. Now, the whole Saving Christmas message last year originated with the Behavioural Insights people. It's messaging that they brought back from Slovakia when they visited to see how they were doing mass testing out there. And they thought it's really great. You know, you get people behind a cause. Come on, we're all in this together. We're going to save Christmas.
Yeah.
Actually, what it did was really mess with people's heads. It was like psychological torture. Christmas is our huge cultural and religious and family event. And the idea of it being cancelled was just awful, and it divided families.
And so many people spent Christmas alone as a result as well.
So sad,
right?
So sad. And so, I mean, I think we're in this really, really strange Groundhog Day with Christmas, but the idea of talking about cancelling Christmas would have been completely unthinkable 2 years ago. And now we're just saying, oh yeah, we don't want to cancel Christmas again. There's something about it that's a little bit nudgy.
Yes.
So although the reasons to cancel Christmas this year are ostensibly about supply chains, what it does is also put into your mind the COVID restrictions of last year. There's something about being good boys and girls. Like, do what you're told so that Santa comes.
Yeah.
More worryingly, I think we need to worry about who's drafting our New Year's resolutions, because all this Christmas stuff is kind of linked in with green targets as well. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but all this stuff about saving Christmas is just feels a little bit nudgy.
Yes, it really does, because we're also hearing Boris saying, oh, this Christmas will be a lot better than last Christmas, don't worry about that. But all this nonsense about supply chains and running short of stuff, I just think it's rubbish. I just don't buy any of it. I don't know anyone that has walked into a shop anywhere in Britain and not been able to buy whatever they wanted. I just don't.
I couldn't buy a chicken last weekend.
A chicken?
A chicken. Yeah.
I could have sold you a chicken. I have a spare one in the freezer.
Well, I remember the next time we'll be doing black market exchanges under the desk at Talk Radio.
That's what it'll be.
Buying chickens. Can I get my turkey and my pigs
during wartime.
Pigs and blankets here too?
Well, I make my own, you see. That's the other thing you can do, which is what I say to people. Buy some sausages, buy some bacon, wrap it round, put it in the oven. Bob's your uncle, or not.
I thought you meant make your own chickens.
Well, you could have your own chickens. I used to keep chickens when I was a student.
Maybe that's how it's all going to go.
Do you know what? One of them, I'm just going to very quickly tell you this because we're running late. One of them, we thought one of them stopped laying eggs, so we killed it and ate it.
What,
and we had to import a guy in to karate chop its neck because none of us wanted to do it.
Aww.
And then we found all the eggs. They've been laying them somewhere else.
Oh no.
Tasted great though, I have to say. Anyway, that's enough chicken for today. If you've got chicken and you've got extra chicken, Laura Dodsworth's looking for one. Lovely to see you.